The research vessel Aurora's wake sliced through the ink-black waters of the South Pacific. It was here, beyond all known charts, where the currents twisted in ways no satellite could track. Dr. Ilara Voss, a marine biologist with a reputation for chasing myths, stood at the bow, inhaling the salt air. They had come for a reason, to investigate the black current, a phenomenon whispered about in fishing villages. Boats that crossed it vanished without a trace, and divers who swam near it never resurfaced. Theories ranged from magnetic anomalies to rogue waves. Ilara's team, Captain Jonas Reeve, sonar tech Avery Park, and deep-sea engineer Malik Cade, were skeptical, but intrigued. The water ahead shimmered strangely, as though something beneath was moving with deliberate grace. By midnight, the sonar registered a contact large, moving slowly, then gone. Jonas rubbed his eyes and leaned closer to the monitor, the green phosphor glow painting his face in sickly light. "That's not a whale," he muttered. The blip had appeared at 400 meters, steady, then simply blinked out, as though it had slipped through a crack in the ocean itself. The night above was a blanket of black, the sea swallowing even the pale gleam of the moon. A low swell slapped against the hull of the Vigilant, rocking her gently, as if something far below was breathing. Then, the hum began. A deep low-frequency vibration, felt first in the molars, then in the bones. Alina, the ship's marine biologist, froze mid-step on deck. "Do you hear that?" she asked. Her voice hushed, as if speaking too loud might draw it nearer. Jonas listened. The hum was wrong. It wasn't mechanical, and it wasn't the groan of shifting seabed rock. It had a rise and fall, a strange cadence, almost like a voice too deep to belong to anything human. "That's not geological," Jonas said finally, his tone hard. Malik, the ship's diver, came up from the stern holding his helmet. "You're telling me that's alive?" His words were meant to sound skeptical, but the way he kept glancing over the rail betrayed him. The hum grew stronger. It was joined by something else, a faint, bubbling hiss from the water. That's when the smell hit, metallic, sharp, like blood in the water. Christ. Alina covered her nose with her sleeve. "It's strong, like something's been bleeding out there for hours." Jonas moved to the starboard rail, his flashlight cutting a narrow beam into the black. The water seemed to shift in strange patterns, the ripples not following the wind or the tide. Then, the bubbles appeared. Not the lazy fizz of normal surface water. These were massive, the size of dinner plates, bursting with deep, oily plumes that shimmered in the deck lights. Malik leaned over, his eyes narrowing. The bubbles rose in precise intervals, almost timed. "That's breathing," he whispered. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the hiss of the bubbles breaking and the slow moan of the wind through the rigging. Jonas turned to Alina. "Get me the hydrophone feed. Now." She ran below deck. A few seconds later, the crackle of static filled the bridge speakers, followed by something so strange, it froze them where they stood. A deep, drawn-out exhalation, like the sigh of a cavern exhaling air for the first time in millennia. Malik took a step back from the rail. "That's not a fish. That's not anything I've heard before." Elena's voice came over the intercom, tight with fear. "Jonas, it's circling us." The sonar pinged again, showing a shape vast, crescent-like, sliding through the water just outside their floodlights' reach. The contact moved slow, deliberate, as if studying the Vigilant. Jonas gripped the rail so hard his knuckles went white. "It knows we're here." And then the hum stopped. The sea went dead still. Everyone froze, waiting for something, anything to happen. From the darkness below, a single, massive shadow rose toward the surface. Morning brought a pale, sullen light that painted the horizon in bruised shades of violet and gray. The surface of the ocean was calm, unnervingly calm, but beneath it, the sea pulsed with a hidden restlessness. From the deck of the Orpheus, The black current was visible even to the naked eye, a shifting river inside the ocean itself, darker than the surrounding blue, as if the sea had been split open to reveal an older, thicker substance. It moved against the wind, flowing in defiance of every known law of oceanography. Dr. Alara Voss gripped the railing, her breath clouding in the cold morning air. She had read about anomalies like this in obscure Soviet-era research logs, currents that appeared without tidal cause, carrying with them particulate matter from depths no human had ever charted. Most of the accounts ended abruptly, the data incomplete. She knew why. Beside her, Malik Reyes ran a final systems check on the submersible lumen. The machine gleamed wetly in the morning light, its titanium hull beating with salt spray. "We'll keep the external lights on low," Malik said, fastening his harness. "If this thing reacts to brightness, we don't want to draw it in." Ilara glanced toward the current again. Its surface rippled in strange patterns, not like waves, but like the pulse of something alive. The lumen was lowered into the water, its descent slow and steady. Once inside, the two of them sat surrounded by a cocoon of instruments and readouts. The cabin hummed faintly as the pressure outside increased. The surface world dimmed behind them, the color fading from cobalt to jade, then to a heavy, almost suffocating green dot. At 120 meters, they switched to internal oxygen. At 250, the sun's reach faltered. At 400, the current appeared in full. It was like nothing Alara had ever seen. Vast walls of particulate matter, twisting in vertical columns. The particles shimmered faintly, drifting upward against the pull of gravity, as though the water itself was being inverted. They were inside a living tunnel. Malik eased the lumen forward. "Flow rate's negligible," he muttered. "But the sensors, they can't read density. It's like the water changes every few meters." Shapes moved inside the columns, long, slow silhouettes that melted into the particulate fog the instant the sub's lights touched them. They weren't fish. They weren't eels. Ilara couldn't even be sure they were solid. Every time she tried to track one, it dissolved like smoke in a breeze. Then the first sound came, a low, resonant vibration that made the lumen's hull tremble. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't seismic. It was tonal, almost like a voice. Ilara's chest tightened. "Malik, log that frequency." Before he could respond, something scraped along the port side, not the quick, chaotic contact of a drifting object, but a slow, deliberate drag, as though whatever was out there was testing the lumen, feeling its shape. Both of them froze. The sound moved from the port side, around the stern, then along the starboard. The cabin lights flickered once, twice, before stabilizing. Malik's fingers hovered over the thruster controls. "We need to pull back." "Wait," Alara whispered. She peered through the viewport, watching the shifting columns. Something was there, following their movement. She saw a curve, impossibly smooth, like the arch of a massive fin. Then, a reflection of their own lights. No, not a reflection. An eye. It blinked. The particulate around them spiraled inward, the current's walls tightening. Alara realized, with a chill that sank to her bones, that the black current wasn't just water, it was the creature's domain. The shapes they'd seen weren't drifting inside it. They were part of it. The scraping sound came again, louder this time, vibrating through their teeth. Malik adjusted the sub's pitch, but the sonar went wild, static, false echoes, readings that made no spatial sense. Something vast was moving in the darkness ahead, and it was coming closer. A massive shadow slid across the viewport, blotting out the faint glimmer of the trench walls. The sub's floodlights caught on something impossibly vast, its outline shifting like a living continent. Then slowly, deliberately to colossal, yellow eyes opened in the dark. Each iris was the size of a lifeboat, slitted like a predator's, but glowing faintly from within. Their light rippling through the black water like molten gold. The creature's body coiled past in silence, serpentine, and impossibly long, armored in plates of black chitin that seemed older than the rock around them. Along its flanks, rows of bioluminescent spines began to pulse in slow, hypnotic waves, blue, green, then violet, a rhythm that wasn't random, a message, a language older than human memory, woven into light. Inside the sub, no one spoke. Even the hum of the engines felt blasphemous. Ilara's breath fogged her visor. She leaned closer to the glass, her voice a trembling thread. "It's not attacking," she said, barely audible over the groan of the hull. "It's watching." Then the hum came back. Not from the engines, from the water itself, deep, resonant, and primal. It vibrated through their bones, rattling the loose tools in the cabin. The sound was less a noise and more a presence, as though something vast and unseen had stirred awake. The creature tilted its head, as if acknowledging some unseen signal. Its glowing spines shifted color, deep crimson, now, and it began to swim away. But not in haste. It moved with the slow certainty of a monarch leaving its throne, vanishing into the abyss beyond the reach of light. The water it displaced didn't just ripple, it spiraled. The current tightened around the sub like an invisible hand, dragging them into the spinning maw. Lights on the console flared red. The depth gauge began to climb. They weren't being pulled down by gravity. They were being taken. The deeper they went, the stranger the ocean became. Colors didn't just darken, they warped. Reds melted into eerie purples. Blues glowed faintly as though alive. Even the water pressure felt different, as if gravity itself were bending. And slow, nauseating waves. Marina's fingers tightened on the submersible's controls. Her depth gauge clicked past limits no vessel had ever safely attempted. The sound seemed to echo inside her helmet, even though she knew that was impossible. Then the voices began, at first, just a faint hum, like whale song, but sharper, fractured, then words. Not in any language she knew, a chorus of whispers, seeping through the comm system, distant and overlapping, as though the trench itself was remembering something. "Do you hear that?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Yes." Dr. Patel replied from the second pod, his tone low, almost reverent. "It's answering us." Lights flickered across the sub's exterior sensors. A pattern, rhythmic, deliberate. At the edge of the trench, the darkness parted, and there it was. A ruin, vast, silent, ancient. Its walls were cloaked in centuries of coral, sponges, and sea fans swaying in the cold current. Massive stone columns rose from the abyssal floor, each carved with spiraling runes. And in the shifting glow of their floodlights, Marina saw it, the same exact patterns, pulsing faintly on the carvings, as on the monster they had encountered days earlier. The symbols seemed to breathe. Her mind raced. The creature isn't just from here. It's tied to this place. Static hissed through her earpiece. Then Jonas's voice broke in from the surface ship, his tone sharp with urgency. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "But the current, it's moving toward the ship." The COMM line crackled violently, and then they heard it, a low, resonant thrum, the kind of sound that didn't just echo in the ears, but in the bones. Somewhere in the ruin, something had awakened. The ocean convulsed without warning. A deep, resonant boom reverberated through the hull of Aurora's wake, followed by a surge so violent it sent loose gear clattering across the deck. Then, the sea directly beneath the vessel erupted, not with foam or bubbles, but with a column of water that seemed to rise with intention. The ship was wrenched upward, weightless for a terrifying instant, before being cradled in the heaving swell. From the depths, the creature emerged in full. For the first time, its scale was undeniable. Its length eclipsed the vessel itself, each movement slow, yet impossibly strong. It didn't crash into the hull, didn't attack. Instead, it spiraled around the ship in a hypnotic pattern, its vast body a living wall of light and shadow. The motion of its passing churned the sea into a massive vortex, pulling everything toward its spinning center, except the Aurora's wake, which remained in the calm eye, as if the creature were shielding it far below. Aboard the Lumen, Elara and Malik stood transfixed at the viewing glass. The creature's dorsal spines blazed brighter than ever, the blue-white light flickering in pulses. It was no longer random. The pattern was deliberate, almost mathematical. Malik's brow furrowed as he watched the sequence. "It's talking to us," he murmured. Elara glanced at him, tension cutting her voice. Talking, or warning. He didn't take his eyes off the shifting lights. The rhythm quickened, growing urgent, repeating the same sequence over and over. "It's telling us to leave," Malik said finally, the weight of certainty in his voice. "It's warning us." Outside, the vortex tightened, and far in the darkness below, something else began to stir. Back at the surface, the creature made one final, slow circle around Aurora's wake, not in aggression, but almost in ceremony. Its colossal form broke the water only in fragments. Massive ridges and bioluminescent patterns sliding through the swells like living constellations. Then, with a slow, deliberate tilt of its head, it vanished beneath the waves. The current, that unnatural, spiraling column of water, collapsed in on itself as if it had never been there. In seconds, the ocean's surface was eerily flat, save for the foam and wreckage bobbing silently. Whatever strange force had been holding the ruin together, warping the water, was gone. The metallic scent lingered faintly in the air, acrid and wrong, carried off slowly by the wind. Elara and Malik stood on the deck of the Lumen, drenched and breathless, watching the spot where it had disappeared. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the creak of the hull and the distant cry of gulls. Days later, when Elara reviewed the sonar data, the blood drained from her face. The logs were crystal clear and impossible. The readings showed two identical life forms matching the creature's size and energy signature. One had stayed with them, circling the wake, controlling the current. The other had been moving steadily toward an incoming cargo freighter. The freighter never sent a distress call. It simply vanished from radar 23 minutes later, swallowed whole by an ocean that, to anyone on shore, looked calm and unremarkable. No debris, no oil slick, no survivors, and somewhere, deep beneath the surface, two colossal shadows now roamed instead of one. The mystery was officially filed as oceanic anomaly. The reports were sterile, full of data tables, sonar readings, and vague language about fluidic distortions and unconfirmed biological signatures. No mention of the screams, over the comes. No mention of the pressure wave that had rattled their bones. No mention of the eyes, those cold, luminous eyes in the abyss. But Elara knew better. She had seen the way the water had moved, not randomly, but with purpose. She had felt the subtle shifts in current, like the slow, patient breath of something alive. The black current wasn't just a freak phenomenon. It was territory, marked, guarded, controlled. Her sonar review had sealed it to signatures, identical in size and density, vast beyond imagination. One had stayed with them until the current collapsed. The other had peeled away, moving toward the incoming freighter. The one that had vanished without a distress call, without even a blip of debris left behind. And that was the thought that kept her awake at night. If these two were the guards, then what, exactly, were they guarding against? Somewhere in the cold trenches below, the guardians still swam, ancient, tireless, endlessly circling their hidden perimeter, not to hunt, not to feed, but to keep something far older and far worse from ever rising. And Elara knew, with the kind of dread that sank into her bones, that one day they might fail.